You shower before bed. You put on clean clothes. You get into fresh sheets. And then somehow, by morning, the smell is back. Not always stronger. Not always awful. Just different. Heavier. A bit sour. Sometimes sharper. And that is the part that confuses people. Because during the day, your sweat may barely smell at all. But at night, it can feel like your body changes completely. If that has happened to you, you are not imagining it. And you are definitely not the only one. What surprises most people is this. Night sweat does not smell different because your body suddenly makes a completely different kind of sweat after dark. Most of the time it smells different because the conditions around that sweat change. Your body temperature shifts. Your hormones can shift. Your stress pattern can shift. Your skin stays covered for hours. Your sweat sits on the body longer. And the longer it stays there, the more chance it has to change. So in this video, I want to walk you through what may really be happening. Why sweat at night can smell different from sweat during the day. Why this can become more noticeable after 40 or 50, and when it is probably harmless, and when it may be worth paying closer attention. As you listen, see if any part of this sounds familiar. Because once you understand the pattern, the whole thing starts to make a lot more sense. Now, the first thing to clear up is simple. Sweat itself is not usually the main smell. That is the part many people never get told. Fresh sweat, on its own, often does not smell very strong. The smell usually becomes noticeable after sweat mixes with bacteria on the skin. That is when the chemistry changes. That is when body odor starts to build. So when you wake up and notice that overnight smell, you are not just smelling sweat. You are smelling sweat that has been sitting on the skin, mixing with bacteria, mixing with body oils, mixing with warmth, mixing with fabric, for hours. And that changes everything. During the day, sweat has less time to settle. You move around, air circulates, clothes shift, you may towel off, you may wash your face, you may change your shirt. Even if you sweat a bit, the whole process gets broken up. At night, it is different. You lie still. Your body stays in close contact with the same fabric. Heat gets trapped. Moisture stays in place. And the sweat has much more time to turn into a smell that feels stronger by morning. So right away, one big answer is this. Night sweat can smell different simply because it has more time, more warmth, and less airflow. That alone explains a lot. But it is not the whole story. Here is where it gets more interesting. Not all sweat is triggered in the same way. Some sweat is mostly about cooling the body. Some is more connected to stress and to certain body areas, especially the underarms and groin. That second kind tends to be thicker, and when it mixes with bacteria, it can smell stronger. This is why stress sweat often smells different from exercise sweat. That difference is real, and it matters at night. Because not all night sweating comes from being too warm. Sometimes it comes from the nervous system. Sometimes it comes from hormonal shifts. Sometimes it comes from poor sleep, restless sleep, anxious sleep, or the kind of overnight tension you do not fully notice until morning. In other words, the body may be more active at night than it looks from the outside. You seem asleep, but inside, the system may still be working through stress. That is why some people wake up damp even when the room does not feel especially hot. And that is also why the smell can feel different. Because the sweat may be coming from a different trigger. Not movement, not exercise, but internal pressure. If that sounds familiar, stay with me. Because this next part is where a lot of people suddenly realize, oh, that might be me. After 40, and especially after 50, many people notice that their sweat changes. Not just how much they sweat, but when they sweat, and how it smells. You may find you feel warmer at night than you used to. You may wake up with a damp chest, damp neck, damp underarms, or a sweaty back. You may notice your sleepwear smells different in the morning, even though your hygiene has not changed. That is often where hormones come into the picture. For women, this can become especially noticeable during perimenopause and menopause. Hormonal shifts can affect temperature regulation. That can lead to hot flushes and night sweats. And once more sweating happens at night, the chance of noticing more odor goes up too. Not because you are unclean, not because you did anything wrong, but because the body is running warmer, sweating more, and keeping that moisture against the skin and fabric for hours. That is a powerful combination. And even outside menopause, hormones still matter. Changes in stress hormones, changes in sleep quality, changes in metabolism, changes in how the body handles temperature. All of that can influence how much you sweat at night, and how different that sweat smells by morning. So if you have been thinking, this did not happen 10 years ago, you may be right. Bodies do change. Skin changes. Temperature regulation changes. Sleep changes. And yes, body odor patterns can change too. That does not automatically mean something is wrong. Often it means the body is changing in ways no one explained clearly enough. Now let me add another layer people often miss. The bedroom itself can quietly make all of this worse. A warm room, heavy bedding, synthetic sleepwear, sheets that trap heat, a mattress that holds warmth. All of that can increase sweating. And once sweating increases, smell becomes more likely. This is why two people can have similar health, but one wakes up feeling fine, and the other wakes up feeling damp and self-conscious. The environment matters, more than most people realize. And then there is the fabric. Sleepwear and bedding do not just absorb moisture. They also hold skin oils, dead skin cells, bacteria, and the leftovers of sweat from previous nights if they are not washed often enough. So sometimes the smell you notice in the morning is not just from that one night. It is from the body plus the fabric around it. That is why collars, pillowcases, underarm areas, and chest areas often seem to hold the strongest smell. They have been collecting the same chemistry again and again. If this is already sounding familiar, that matters. Because this is one of those things people often blame on hygiene, when the bigger issue may be trapped, heat, fabric, and timing. And if you blame the wrong cause, you usually try to fix the wrong thing. Now let's talk about one more reason night sweat can smell different: food, alcohol, medication, and stress load. Some people notice worse night sweating after alcohol, some after spicy food, some after a stressful day, some after starting a new medication. And what makes this tricky is that the effect may not show up straight away. You may feel fine at dinner, fine before bed, then wake up in the middle of the night warm, restless, or damp. And by morning, the smell is there. That is why it can help to look for patterns instead of judging one random night. Not overthinking, just noticing. Does it happen after wine? after a hotter room, after poor sleep, after a stressful day, after a new medicine, after especially heavy blankets. Sometimes the body gives you a pattern before it gives you a clear explanation. That pattern can be very useful. Here is another important point. Night sweat smell is not always about the underarms. Some people notice it more around the neck, some on the chest, some on the scalp, some on the back. That can make it confusing, because people expect body odor to follow the same daytime pattern. But nighttime sweating spreads differently. You are lying down. Heat distribution changes. Fabric contact changes. Airflow changes. So the smell map can change too. And that is why morning odor can feel a bit unfamiliar. Now let's get to the part people really want to know. When should you stop brushing it off? Most of the time, a different sweat smell at night is not an emergency. If it happens once in a while, if the room was warm, if you used heavy bedding, if you had alcohol, spicy food, stress, or a rough night of sleep. That is usually not dramatic. It may not be pleasant, but it is understandable. But there are times when it is worth paying closer attention. If night sweats are happening often, if they are heavy enough to wake you up, if they are clearly new for you, if the body odor changes suddenly and stays changed, or if night sweats come with other symptoms, like fever, weight loss, ongoing cough, diarrhea, or feeling unwell, that is when it makes sense to speak with a doctor. Not out of panic, out of respect for the signal. There is a big difference between fear and attention. Fear says something terrible is happening. Attention says this is new, this is persistent, I should check it properly. That second response is usually the better one. And if you have made it this far, here is the takeaway I really want you to remember. A different smell at night does not automatically mean your body is dirty. It does not automatically mean poor hygiene. And it does not automatically mean disease. Very often it means this: sweat stayed on the body longer. Heat stayed trapped longer. Moisture stayed in the fabric longer, and the chemistry had more time to build. That is the simplest explanation. And in many cases, it is the right one. Now, if your goal is simply to reduce the smell, there are a few practical steps that may help. Keep the room cooler. Use lighter bedding if you tend to overheat. Choose more breathable sleepwear. Wash pillowcases and sleepwear regularly. Notice whether alcohol, spicy meals, stress, or certain medications seem to make it worse. And if this has become more noticeable with age, do not dismiss that either. Aging changes the body in quiet ways. Sometimes the body does not shout. Sometimes it just leaves clues. A warmer night, broken sleep, a damp collar, a smell that was not there before. Those things may seem small, but they are still worth understanding. Because once you understand them, you stop fighting your body blindly. You start reading it more clearly. And that is a much better place to be. Before we finish, I want to ask you something. Have you noticed this more during stressful periods, warmer nights, or after 40 or 50? Let me know in the comments. I read those, and they help shape what we talk about next. And if you like calm, clear explanations like this, subscribe and stay with us. A lot about healthy aging feels less worrying once it is explained properly. So one last time. Why does night sweat smell different from day sweat? Usually because nighttime changes the conditions. More trapped heat, more moisture, more time on the skin, more contact with fabric, sometimes more stress, sometimes more hormonal change. And together, those things can create a smell that feels very different by morning. Sometimes that is completely understandable. Sometimes it deserves a closer look. But either way, it is not something you are imagining. And if your body has been trying to tell you this lately, it may be worth listening. This video is for educational purposes only and does not replace medical advice.